So my passion is to learn about other people's passions, because when someone has a chance to talk about what they're most passionate about, everything about their being becomes brighter, it becomes more real, it becomes more them. And I think that authenticity and that feeling alive and connected and present in the world is a thing I want to surround myself with all of the time. On today's episode, I am talking with the thoughtful Justin Simpkins. If you want to learn more about Justin, please go to janesplace.com, where you can learn more about him and his favorite comfort food. All right, Justin, so the key thing that we like to talk about at Jane's Place is what you're most passionate about. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be one thing, but whatever it is, it's the thing that gets you most excited, gets you most energized. And how we started to get on this at Jane's Place was the idea that when you talk about something that you're passionate about, you kind of show up with the full you. Mm-hmm. And that full you is confident and present. Mm-hmm. And it's just a really special vibe. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is try to capture a little bit about what you're passionate about and why.
I love that. That's my whole MO, is ever since I started, filmmaking is my background, and I love interviewing people. So it's interesting to be on the other side of the lens. But the whole reason I got into that is because of that very sentiment. And I love that spark in a person's eye when they're all lit up about what they're talking about. And I just found that pointing my camera towards those people and giving them the space to actually let that come through and feel that in themselves, and then also reflect it back to them and show them the video after, I think it creates this beautiful circuit of building that confidence, exactly like what you're talking about. So that feels really good. And in terms of what I'm most passionate about, I kind of divide it up into a couple different groups. One of my values is aliveness and really feeling that charge, what it means to be fully alive. And I'll start with that in the movement realm. Exercise, activity, yoga have been a big part of my life. I started practicing almost 10 years ago, and I got my teacher training 6 years ago. So wow. Teaching and practicing yoga has been a big passion of mine, and not only for the physical element of it, and I know you've been doing some on yourself, so yes. I want to hear your thoughts about how it's landed for you, but also for the mental aspect and just finding that total reset. So I notice that when I feel strong and lean and flexible and energized in my body, that really allows me to bring that same level of energy to anything else that I'm doing in my life. So movement is kind of the core of where I start with my passion. And then I've been following the intersection of passion and profession for my entire life now. I totally understand that it's a little bit of a slippery slope, right? Because if you start to base how you're going to build your life, how you're going to make money on something that you're excited about, you can get into a little bit of hairy waters where it's I start to remove some of that intrinsic energy and excitement, because it's I have to make money off of this now. And there's this whole pressure on top of it. So I get that it's a fine line there, but I really like to intertwine those things, because when I come back to this value of aliveness, we spend so much of our time at work and yes. doing our profession, and I want that to feel good and I want that to feel energizing. So the season that has taken over and what I'm working on right now, which I'm very passionate about, is bringing people into small group discussions. And the whole origin of this is that I was getting really tired of just endlessly consuming content. I was noticing that I was watching a lot of things, I was listening to a lot of things. Anytime I was in a professional environment and there was an education element to it, it was always one-sided. It was always someone standing or on a Zoom call talking to me, talking at me, saying, here are the perfect slides, here's the way that you can go do this. But then it was always up to me to go back and figure out how to integrate that into my life. And one thing that I noticed is that if I was able to start to digest that a little bit through reflecting on it, through talking with other people about it, it actually allowed me to make progress more effectively, because I wasn't just on my own in it. So that's something that I'm passionate about in my professional life.
Well, tell me a little bit more about how that's manifesting into a business for you.
Yeah.
And before you do that, I do want to say I think you're right. There is this really tricky balance about what you're following your passion
Yeah.
and then figuring out how you make money on it. One of the people that I had on the podcast earlier is a guy named Tim Cook, and he's a musician with the Subdudes, which was a band that was really hot in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And he is in his late 70s, and he's been a musician his whole life. And he was like, I've never made any money, but I follow my passion.
Yeah.
And we had this whole discussion around how you turn your passion into money.
Yeah.
And how most people don't get to do what they really love.
Yeah.
Just because they can't figure out how to monetize it.
Right.
And we need to try to figure out how to do both.
Yeah, but I also hear people say that no, like keep it separate. Like find something that's
Yes.
going to allow you to like build a solid foundation and have a stable income, and then use the rest of your time to like just fully be in your passion. So I think it's ultimately like what you want to choose, but you could probably go both ways with it.
Well, I think as a CEO for so many years,
Yeah.
I realistically know that whatever food business I'm running, it's not going to be someone's real passion.
Right.
But you also wanted to show up and be present and use your word aliveness.
Yeah.
And not just be like, oh my gosh, is it Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock
Right.
so I can go do my passion?
Yeah.
Like how you sort of try to figure out ways to engage people and
Yeah.
be realistic that that isn't what they're living for, but that when they're there, they're present.
Yeah. And that's actually a good segue into how I'm turning this small group
Right.
discussion aspect into a business. And really it's working to bring that sense of aliveness and that sense of connection back into the workplace. And how I see that happening is focus on small. I think we got really obsessed with scale and how can we create as big of an audience as possible. You know, if you're giving a webinar, you want the most amount of people. If you're posting a YouTube video, you want the most amount of people. And we equated that to value, like the most amount of people equals the most value. And I'm taking a little bit of a radical hot take on that and saying, no, actually, what if we cap the room at 4? Or what if we cap the room at 5? And we had these really small spaces that allowed us to be in conversation and connection and ultimately be seen. I think it sounds a little like woo-woo and out there, but when you are heard and seen in your experience, especially in the workplace, I think it creates this energetic circuit that actually does what you're talking about, of takes it out of, I'm just going to show up 9 to 5. When 5 hits, I'm going to be out of here. I'm not going to think about it. But if during the day and during the week, you're allowing people to actually feel like they're part of something and you're actually hearing their voice and looking at the experience that they're going through, I think it creates a little bit more of a sense of community and family and investment from the person, where I'm not just going to like leave this at the door and think about it like that.
So how do you curate the groups of people that you are bringing together to talk? Are they within a company or people that you know? Or how, as you're starting to do this, how do you get that right combination of people to get that sort of deep discussion that you strive for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a little bit of a value on it doesn't matter to some extent. If you have an intimate space with the right containers around it, I believe that everybody can offer something to that group and everybody can receive something from that group, regardless of where they are at in their lives. That being said, once you bring people who are experiencing the same things into groups together, that can create a lot more resonance around that. So how I'm framing this out is dialogue as a service or conversation as a service. And I've broken it down into a couple different customer segments. But the idea is that I'm going to take your curriculum or what you want to educate your people on or what you want your community to learn, and I'm going to take that content and I'm going to turn it into this small group discussion format. And that's going to be a way for these people to not just passively receive content, but actually discuss it with their peers. So for example, one project that I'm working on, this man is a consultant and he works with Fortune 500 companies, specifically across their like mid-level management tiers. And his whole thing is futurism and how are we going to help integrate AI into your workflow? How are we going to educate you on the latest technology? How are we going to help you optimize what you're doing as a manager? And what he said to me was that I would really love a space where the people that I'm working with, the managers that I'm teaching this AI content to, could envision how they are going to roll it out in their workflow. So it's not just him coming on and giving the quarterly 90-minute presentation where he says, here are the top things happening in AI. After that happens, they're able to hop into these small discussion groups, talk about best practices, talk about where their roadblocks are, talk about where they're feeling stuck, what they're feeling energized about. So it's kind of a continuing education approach to this central head of content that people are giving and educating people on, that allows them to integrate the information a little bit more and digest it over time.
And then when you are pulling these groups together, are you the facilitator, or are they facilitated? How does that work? And I love your idea of, since we worked together 3 years ago on a concept that I was so fixated on trying to scale it.
Yep.
I love this kind of anti-scale concept, because it'll probably actually result in scale.
Exactly. Ultimately, we want to be able to scale it, but the scaling starts with these really small spaces. And a really cool new development in this whole project is I've built this partnership with an organization called Frankly. And Frankly was developed out of the Harvard Applied Media Sciences Lab. And they went on this quest to facilitate political deliberation. They wanted to bring people on opposite sides of the aisle together into conversation, so we could start talking about it and actually seeing that it's not the enemy, it's like another person on the other side of the aisle.
Right.
So they built this tool called Frankly, and really what it is pretty much a glorified Zoom room with a couple extra add-ons. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to build an agenda that can be based in video prompts and text prompts, and it actually, through a timer, allows groups of 4 to go through a self-guided experience together of reflecting on powerful questions, having deep discussions, and really like integrating those insights. Another cool little feature is it's got this little meter that relates to how much you've been talking. So if you talk a lot, it goes a little red and gives you a gentle nudge to let other people listen. And if you're not talking, it goes to blue and encourages you to participate in the discussion. So the idea is that 4 people can self-guide through this small group discussion, and that can scale endlessly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then does it give, if everybody's on blue and nobody's participating, does it give prompts for another question or something to keep people being engaged?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I do as my service, is I set up the flow of conversation. And that's what I'm endlessly fascinated about, is how do you build the perfect container to have a really juicy conversation.
Right.
And, you know, we talk about food on this podcast, but that's where some of the most beautiful conversations happen, right? Is over a meal. And so I'm so interested in how you can create that same energy of those really juicy, lit up, alive-based conversations in different containers. And that happens through, how do you prompt it? How do you time it out? How do you, when the conversation lulls, bring people back into it? So that's like my quest right now, is how to design the perfect conversation.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I've enjoyed so much about Jane's Place podcast is just having dialogues about this, you know, and it's just so, and you want to figure out how you can get other people involved and really be, you know, just asking the questions that people want to ask and talking about things that they care about. Because again, it just brings out like a side of us that isn't the, oh my gosh, I have to go to work or I have to do that. It's like, oh my gosh, I am alive inside here. Like I'm alive.
Yeah, and that happens when somebody like sees you in that, you know, we can like feel it right now. So my dream is to be able to create something that allows people to have the conversation that we're having. Like if they see this online, I would love for them to be able to go and sit with other viewers in this virtual space and have this self-guided experience that allows them to like answer these questions and get the same energy that we're getting right now.
Well, one more thing I want to talk a little bit about at the close of our discussion is what you said earlier about being seen and heard, and that so much content is coming at us as opposed to us being able to participate. And all the work that you've done in the last couple of years with so many small group settings and really curating a lot of dialogues. What's different now? I mean, is this kind of a post-pandemic world where what are some of the big insights that you're seeing as you're trying to pull people together to be seen and heard?
Yeah, I think a little bit. That's a good point. I don't know if I've totally reflected on it 100%, but off the top of my head, what I would say is when everything went virtual, the amount of content that was being produced went up exponentially, right? And everybody's strategy all of a sudden went to, no, we're going to go fully into this virtual content. We're going to try and post as much as possible. And it's just getting oversaturated. There's too much of it. There's too much content out there, and we can't keep up with it. And it's just this constant watching and listening and consuming and reading over and over and over again. And I'm not saying that there isn't bad content out there or that there isn't like we should stop doing it. But what I am saying is that I really believe we need to start to create space in our lives to let some of this land. Because right now it's just this endless cycle of consumption, and I don't think it's sticking anymore.
Right.
I think that's what the pandemic created, is it's just like this constant bombardment.
Well, one of the things that we were trying to do with Jane's Place is make sure that everything was always in person and not virtual. And so somehow, again, I think frankly, if you can figure out how you can create this environment that is virtual, but it feels more like you are sharing comfort food. Yeah. That's like a really big idea.
Yeah, I love that. And it's kind of a hot take, because I agree, in person there's no substitute for it, and you can have these really amazing exchanges, and like being with somebody and their being is really going to generate that energy. But I don't think virtual is inherently wrong or bad. I just think we've been doing it wrong.
Yes.
Like, how many times have you been on a Zoom event where there's one person talking, sharing a deck, half the people's cameras are off? If you get put into a breakout room, it's just this empty space, and you end up just like talking chit chat around it. It's not that the virtual itself is the wrong thing. We've just been setting it up wrong, because I believe in the power of virtual. Like, there are so many incredible people all over the world, and we have access to be in discussion with them. But just the ways that we're doing it are, again, it's all about like, I'm being talked at. I'm not having the space to talk.
No, I think that's a huge insight. And so what's the name of your company?
It's called Chat Labs.
Chat Labs.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think we have to figure out how we get Chat Labs and Jane's Place to work together, because I do think your idea, it's a huge idea, and I think there's a way to maybe launch it with what we're trying to do here and make these real authentic dialogues have even more impact.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I'd love to take some of the themes from season 1 and some of these deep topics that you've gotten into, because I know for a fact that there are people out there who want to engage about that and who want to really like take the time to be a part of that conversation. And it would be so cool to offer them the opportunity to have a discussion around some of the episodes that come out. So
that's great. Well,
stay
let's
tuned.
do it.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you, Justin.
And my one final question to you.
Yes.
If you could have the most amazing small group discussion about any topic, what would get you excited to hop into that space?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think it would have to be in this area of passion. Yeah. I'm so enamored with this idea of hearing what gets people excited and the range of things that people are, to get them up and motivated, and how it's so not connected with what we do in our lives. I'd love to just see, how do we make that connection stronger, and maybe help people realize that, again, they can connect the two. Yeah. I don't know. So I'm really, really intrigued with that, and almost more as a voyeur in some ways, where I would love to just hear some of these discussions and sort of see how people show up having the discussion. Absolutely. And I think the first step to building that connection you're talking about is seeing somebody talk about it and giving them the space to voice it through. Yes. Because then they feel, oh, somebody else saw me in that. I am actually really excited about that. When I go back out into my own life, I'm going to take more action around that, because now I have this charge of like, oh, I've been seen and heard in it, and someone kind of like recognized me for that passion. So I love that. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for asking me a tough question. Perfect. I love it. That's great. Justin and I met through Watson Institute many years ago, and 4 years ago co-founded a career development company called Haven. As the leader, I was driving us to scale quickly and have a viable business proposition. What I found after a year of developing programming and adding amazing team members was that although I was passionate about helping careers, I did not want to do it to make a living. When it went from passion to work, it actually took the joy out of it for me. So I went back into a CEO role at Rudy's, where I also had a passion and skills and could make money. I also really resonated with Justin's discussion about being heard. Talking to Justin today brought up so many thought-provoking questions for me. Here are just a couple for us to consider. First, how important is passion as the key criteria for finding work that we love? And second, how do we bring passion into whatever we do, whether it is a job, a relationship, or a hobby? Special thanks to Jane's Place fabulous producer, Aditi Joshi, who made my passion a reality. I am also so appreciative that the amazing musician, Tim Cook, provided the lively music from the Subdudes called Them Figs. This podcast was brought to you by Rudy's Bakery new gluten-free Sandos with Justin's Nut Butter and from our friends at Naturally Colorado. I want to keep asking questions that matter, and I want this to feel like a space where your story belongs too. If there's something you want to talk about, a moment, a memory, a shift you're going through, Jane's Place door is always open. Truly. You can drop me a note on the website, join a future episode, or simply listen in when you're ready. Because Jane's Place isn't just a podcast, it's a gathering, and I'm so grateful that you're here.